Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia back with the latest episode of the Jungle Roar podcast powered by Game Time and Prize Picks. Back with me on this episode of the Jungle Roar pod as training camp winds down and we're finally getting to the point of camp cutdowns and looking forward to the regular season opener September 8th against the New England Patriots is James Rapien of BengalsTalk.com. Of course, you can listen to him and watch him daily on LockedOn, on LockedOn Bengals. And he has a great show with Andrew Fox Miller, and it is Enter the Jungle. James, how you doing?
I'm good, Trags. How are you, my man?
I am looking forward to the end of training camp and the preseason. I don't know about you, but I really want the regular season to get here. But before it gets here, James, we have to talk about Joe Burrow, his right hand, the hand that was clenching a lot, and he was flexing it a lot in Monday's practice. I'm not a doctor. I'm the first one to admit that right here on this very podcast on the Jungle Roar pod. But I want to get your impressions of what you saw Monday as it relates to his entire body of work from in what we've seen this training camp.
Yeah, the past week has just been a little weird. And weird doesn't mean injured or hurt.
Right.
It means that Burrow isn't 100% back to the Burrow that we're used to. And I think back to, and by the way, that doesn't even mean physically, because I still think he's physically capable of making all the throws. But it's similar to in 2021. He's coming back from the ACL, and it's still COVID protocol, so we're still really far away. But he would have a good practice, and then you'd have a couple of bad practices, and then a really bad practice, and then two good ones, and then a bad one, and then an okay one. And there was ups and downs and inconsistencies. For most of camp, Burrow had been as consistent as anyone on the field. I mean, he had been awesome, I thought, and really consistent, accurate, all of those things. In the past week, it's just gotten harder. The struggles have been there. And maybe that's because Dax Hill is awesome at cornerback and has gotten comfortable. Maybe that's because this pass rush has found its way. Part of it is certainly not having Jamar Chase. On Monday, he didn't have Jamar or T when they didn't score a touchdown during team drills. So I think it's a mixture of things. And one of those things is him feeling out the wrist and continuing to work through it. So is he physically 100%? Probably, but he's still figuring out as he comes back from a very serious injury, how he's going to play and not just play at a high level, but play at the Joe Burrow level, which is among the best in the league.
Look, we live in the immediate social media information age. We all know that. We accept that. And when we see the black glove go on Burrow's hand, everybody loses their mind on Monday. Now, Ben Baby, I thought, did a really good job of explaining what that glove was for. It was to create extra sweat on the hand when the hand is particularly dry. So when the glove comes off and you're actually taking live reps under center or in shotgun, you can get a grip on the ball and throw the ball.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I also think he's still working through wrist stuff, regardless of the glove. Like if the glove thing is what threw up more red flags, right? But
right. It's clearly, just go ahead.
Like the thing that concerns me more is the fact that there was like one downfield throw during team drills.
Right. It was check down Charlie on Monday.
And that might not just be Burrow, to be clear. That might be a couple of things. No Chase, no Higgins. I don't consider Andre Yosevach a super deep downfield threat. It's what they drafted Jermaine Burton for, and he's treading water right now, trying to make sure that he catches up, I think, and gets up to speed to play with Joe Burrow and get in with the first team offense. Right. No one's going to mistake Trenton Irwin for a burner. Charlie Jones just coming back from a leg injury that looked way more serious than it is. Like, it's real easy to just paint it out to be, oh yeah, well, there weren't many downfield options available. I still wonder, though, because the Joe Burrow that we know would still take a shot here and there. And we didn't see it on Monday. Hopefully we see it in the joint practice on Tuesday.
Yeah. And that was kind of leads into my next question is, do you think we've seen enough of Joe Burrow in preseason, whether it's joint practices or the one series he played in the preseason opener against Tampa Bay, to be comfortable with where he's going to be heading in to the opener on September 8th?
Yeah, I do. I think, like I said, he's still among the most consistent, even with this past week, the most consistent players of camp. And when you add all of these other factors in, how much easier is it going to feel when Jamar and T are out there all the time? Right. And
Right.
And so I'm confident in Joe. And it's more about, honestly, making sure he isn't pushing through something if there is something. That would be my concern, because I know I'm stubborn and I would want to do that. Right. And still want to do that, even after all the stuff
Well,
that he
he's
went through.
said, James, not to cut you off, but he has said that that's the one thing he's learned about his body in his first 4 years of his NFL career. And that is, if I need to take a break, I need to take a break and back off, so I'm there for the long term. And I think he's done an excellent job of that, based on what I've seen. Now, when people ask me, how has Burrow looked to you? When the average fan runs up to me and says, Trags, what do you think of Burrow so far this camp? I'm like, he's made all the throws, maybe up until yesterday, but he's made all the throws that I need to see him make. And the one thing that does stand out to me is the throw he made to T. Higgins that was incomplete, that was batted away by the corner. You cannot throw a better deep ball than he threw to T. Higgins in that preseason opener. And that, to me, is the sign I look for. How does he look in game conditions? We've only seen the one series. Every time I've seen him throw in practice up until this week, he has shown plenty of zip over the middle, plenty of zip. And occasionally the ball outside the numbers, there have been one or two flutterers, if you will. But that doesn't concern me, because even when the ball flutters, it still got to where it needed to be. So that's where I am on Joe Burrow. I think we have to wait and see how he does, how he comes through this week. And then he's going to have 2 weeks to get ready for the opener against New England.
Yep. That's it. That's exactly what it is get him ready to go. And it doesn't matter as long as he's ready to go week 1. And so however you get him there, the good news is Joe Burrow has taken way more reps this training camp than he's taken in any training camp. He's taken more preseason snaps than any preseason. And I know it was one drive, fine, but still, it's the most he's had. And with the joint practices, this dwarfs what they did in 2020 when he did have a healthy training camp, but way more reps in way more action. So he should be ready to go.
He is James Rapien at BengalsTalk.com and the LockedOn Bengals podcast. Two pieces of the offense that have impressed me in camp are two running backs, Zach Moss and Chase Brown. I've really liked what I've seen from them. Monday, we saw a lot of them because Joe Burrow was checking down quite a bit. The burst I see from those two, no disrespect, I'm not kicking the guy out the door. It's different than what we saw from Joe Mixon the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's just such a better fit. Fit matters so much.
Yep.
Trags. It just does.
Yep.
Because Joe's more talented. Honestly, Joe Mixon was such a fun evaluation. And from coming into the draft. And from a football standpoint, I thought he was going to be a superstar. And the downside is, and the big what if I think for Joe, and I know you didn't ask me this, but it is.
Yeah.
What if he had been drafted in 2020? What if he comes in with Joe Burrow and doesn't have to play in 2017 with an offensive line that clearly had lost plenty of key pieces and wasn't working. And then 2018 and 2019 on rosters that just weren't that good. No. And then he gets hurt in 2020, has his best season in 21 from a statistical standpoint. And then that's kind of what happens to running backs is then you lose it. You lose a little bit of that explosiveness, a little bit of that pop. And so that is a big what if for me for Joe Mixon. But as far as this group, the top two guys specifically, Chase Brown, Zach Moss, or Zach Moss, Chase Brown, I think they carry themselves exactly how the Bengals want them to. I think they know the ins and outs of pass blocking, the willingness to learn, and the talent. I'm not trying to downplay their talent because I think both guys are talented and fit this offense, are comfortable running out of the gun, are comfortable running between the tackles, are comfortable pass blocking, are comfortable catching passes out of the backfield. One thing that's really impressed me, we knew Chase Brown was explosive, but clearly he's gotten better as a pass catcher.
Yeah, he sure
Clearly
has.
he's been focused on pass blocking. And you bring in a guy like Zach Moss, who I think has some explosion to him, has some power to him, and is as reliable hands as I can remember. I mean, he had some really nice catches last week. I talked about Burrow's struggles. Last week he had a touchdown in the red zone where there's someone bearing down on him and he still sticks his hands out there and makes a catch like a receiver would right at the goal line. That's a tough play to make, and he made it. And he made it look easy. So I like those two backs. I wonder about the depth behind them, but I really like what those two guys bring to the table and like their fit a lot.
Samaje P. Ryan. What do you think?
I don't know. We'll see.
That ship sailed, do you think?
Not necessarily. If he's out there, I'll give you another name, Lo, because I think he's on the chopping block too, and he's younger. Clyde Edwards Alaire.
Yep. You've always been always been a big supporter of his. And because of his relationship with Joe,
and Jamar
seem to be a logical fit.
And Jamar. Yep.
Yeah. Right.
If he gets cut by the Chiefs, I would expect him to land in Cincinnati. I will say that. And I haven't said that anywhere else since free agency. And I think that the Bengals, by the way, thought Clyde would be out there a little longer. And Clyde got tired of waiting, so he took that 1-year deal from the Chiefs.
Right.
Just to be clear.
But he could be cut at the deadline, and we'll see what happens. Hey, everybody, it's Trags, Mike Petraglia, host of the Jungle Roar and Code Reds podcasts on CLNS Media. I want to take some time now to tell you about Prize Picks. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as few as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. Do you have an idea of how Zach Moss and Chase Brown are going to be used yet? Because I don't. And people are going to wonder, well, who's the lead back? Well, I think that it could be week to week. It could be a game plan kind of deal. What are your feelings on that?
Exactly that. I think it's very matchup dependent who has the hot hand. I think both guys are going to get almost an equal timeshare. And I think the hope would be that Joe finds comfort with Chase from a pass blocking standpoint, and that Chase Brown shows the between the tackles running ability and the explosiveness to be like a 70-30 or a 60-40 type back to take over the reins by midseason. I think that would be the hope. I also think that Zach Moss is just one of those dudes, man. He's just completely steady. He's what they want is steady running back play. You know what you're going to get down in and down out, week in and week out. And Chase is still a young player that's hoping to reach that and then some. And so we'll see. But I think early on, it'll probably be close to a 50-50 split. And what I'm curious about is, do they rotate drives? Do they sub these guys in and out on third down, first down. Like, where's the trust level there? It's not like we saw a ton of Chase Brown this preseason either. So that element is going to be interesting too, because he didn't get a ton of reps last year. We saw it. He wasn't out there a ton as a rookie. And so days like these joint practices that the Bengals are taking part of, those are huge for a guy like Chase.
Biggest concern in the preseason, I'll tell you what mine is. The fundamentals and the lack of discipline, the penalties. 11 penalties for 123 yards against the Chicago Bears. That's unacceptable. I don't care who's on the field. There has to be an intolerance, if you will, of committing self-inflicted penalties. And that's what I think. That's what, to me, James Rapien, stands between the Bengals and reaching their full potential this year.
Yeah, I think preseason's so tough because a lot of the guys committing penalties aren't going to be here. And so that's part of it. But to your point, you can't be sloppy. And we've seen these sloppy starts. And the fact that, and I wrote it this week, the Bengals haven't won the opener, and it feels like it's ages ago, but won a season opener since they beat the Vikings in 21, where Jamar couldn't catch a pass going into that game. Joe was coming off of an ACL. Like, think about how long ago that feels. So it's time for them to win an opener. I'll tell you what, and I know the Patriots are considered one of the worst teams in the league. You go out there and you have 10 penalties.
You make it a game. You give them a chance.
For sure. You give him, yeah, absolutely. Especially with a Jamar Chase who hasn't practiced yet. And I know he's getting some work in, but man, hasn't practiced yet. 19 days before the start of the season. So yeah, I think it's a good point, because if there's one thing they can't do, it's get off to a slow start with the schedule that they have. They have winnable games in the month of September. Anything less than 3-1 is unacceptable. You have the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Commanders, and the Panthers. And the Patriots and Commanders are at home. Should be 2 wins. You should beat the Panthers. And then you should go to Kansas City and give the Chiefs everything they can handle. That's the expectation I am setting for the Bengals. 3-1 is the minimum. And you can't have a bunch of penalties if you're going to get the 3-1.
Defense has looked really good, James. If there's a takeaway that I've had from this training camp on the positive side, is I think this defense has looked very different than what it was last year. And on Monday, Zach Taylor took some time kind of detailing that, saying that it's provided more challenges, many more challenges to the offense. And I talked to Zach Moss after practice on Monday, and he said what stood out to him is there are so many different body types and styles on the defense that make it difficult for the Bengals offense. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, because the same players can be in many different positions from snap to snap. And I thought that was interesting. And I think the Bengals should be commended for revamping their defense. Do you think it's just as simple as bringing Von Bell and Geno Stone in?
Some of it. Now, give these young corners some credit now. Dax Hill handled that better than I would have. He handled that position change better than I would have.
He's got, I don't know. I don't know about that, James. I think you and Dax should get along very well. You're both chill. Yeah. You don't get upset.
No, I would have been pissed. I would have been. No, because Dax, he ended the year poorly, but he played pretty damn good early in the year. People forget that. And if they hadn't signed the wrong veteran safety, we're probably having a different conversation. And that's where this goes to. And this is why Von is so valuable. Right. And it's valuable to Jordan Battle, and it's valuable to Tyson Anderson. Like, if I'm Tyson Anderson, another guy I get along with well, I'm just trying to be the next Geno Stone. Late round pick, special teamer, all those, because I think he could be. Like, I think he's got some real safety range locked to make the roster, by the way. There you go. Because people think that Tyson's on the bubble. No bubble.
No, I agree with that.
It's those two guys give them such a boost. And for all of the talk, and there was talk, hell, I remember being in debates in the media room, and I won't name names, after Von Bell was signed and he had his press conference, I said, he's starting. And there was, oh, no, Jordan's starting. No, I'm like, no, Von is going to start.
Right.
He's going to start with Geno. Has it even felt like a competition in camp?
No,
It has not even felt like a
not.
competition.
I agree with
Zero
that.
chance. Yep.
And that has to do with the communication. It has to do with leadership back there. And yes,
and he's playing well, by the way. I do want to say Von's had some nice pass breakups. Like he's been around. Like it's not just like he's the old geezer back there. Like the dude's playing well.
No, and they need him to play well because that's what I was about to say. Obviously, his leadership and his communication skills are very, very important. You still have to be able to make plays on the field, and you still have to not embarrass yourself and embarrass the team by getting, just totally toasted on a pass route here and there. That can't happen. So he has always been someone to me that has been a staple of that defense, and I think we're going to see that continue early on. I have high expectations for this defense. I'm curious to see how Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt bounce back this year. You?
Yeah, I think it's a huge storyline. And the reason why, last year was the first year where they had to, together as a tandem, maybe since 2020. I guess you could say 2020. But since they've been a good defense, where they've had to do without. And when you extend linebackers, you're paying them because they're unique, because they can give you something that the average starting linebacker can't. And so when you bring back Jermaine Pratt and then you sign Logan Wilson to an extension, you're doing that saying, all right, you might not have DJ Reader forever. You might not have this front that is going to keep you just completely free. And they need to be able to adjust to that this year. Now, I know they were worried about the back end too and the safeties behind them. Now you don't have to worry about that. So I want to see them get downhill, make plays, do all of the things that we know Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt can do. Because we don't know about that defensive tackle room. I get it. Yeah. But no excuses now. You're veterans. You got to play at a high level. That's why they paid you. That's why they extended you. And so those are two guys. A lot of people talking about the safeties, the secondary. The Bengals really need the linebackers to be themselves because I do think they're really good players.
Mike Petraglia, Trags here, host of the Jungle Roar and Code Reds podcasts on CLNS Media. Well, there is nothing quite like the thrill and excitement of taking in a football game live and in person. Some of my favorite memories when I was growing up was when my dad would take me to a Miami of Ohio game at Miami Field or a UC game at Nippert Stadium. Well, now there's a great app that helps you get the best tickets at the best prices. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. They have lots of great features. Curated deals make it easier to find the best prices on great seats. They have something called the Super Deal. They have seat views before you buy and lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection, all great features that make the Game Time app very, very unique. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also, the defensive line, I thought it was significant, the game that Chris Jenkins had going back and watching the film. Yeah, he had the one sack. Mm-hmm. I think this is a case where the more reps he gets, I think the more comfortable he feels. Early on in camp, James, I don't know if you got the same vibe from watching Chris Jenkins. I don't think he felt like comfortable in his role. He was getting manhandled a few times or many times by a veteran offensive line. I think he feels a little better now and a little more comfortable.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I'm bullish on Chris Jenkins. I think he's the guy. You draft him, you know he's made of the right stuff. You know every rookie's going through it. And we're going to look up week 8 and start to see Chris Jenkins making plays. And maybe sooner. But like making plays in the box score, making important stops or whatever the case is. Like I think that's my vision for Chris Jenkins, to be an instant impact type of guy. And that might not mean an elite run defender, by the way. I know he was a really good run defender at Michigan. I think he's got some juice as a pass rusher. We saw it the other day with the spin move. I think when you have athleticism, hard work, or work ethic, the right character, you grind, you got the strength, clearly, the freakazoid. Like, he's got the right personality, right approach. Like, you just bet on those guys. So I do think he's going to figure it out. And I like him to be a big piece of this defensive line this season, because it can't just be BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins. And I think Chris Jenkins is the one rookie, with McKinley Jackson nicked up as well, not getting the reps. Tough to bank on him right now. But I do think that Chris Jenkins is going to have a solid rookie year.
That sounds what you just described in Chris Jenkins Jr. sounds a lot like Myles Murphy last year to me. And I want to get your impression of what you've seen from Myles Murphy this training camp, and if you think he is ready to take a significant jump, which I think the Bengals need him to make this season.
Yeah, I think Chris Jenkins is going to contribute a bit more than Myles. Is my expectation for him, just because of the state of the position and who's there and who's not, and just have the rotation. But yeah, Myles has to be a main factor. We need to hear, like, if you're listening to the radio broadcast, Dan Horde better be talking about Myles Murphy week 1, right? That's a guy that needs to be in the mix. And part of it is you can only play Hubbard and Hendrickson so much.
Right.
And with Cam Sample out now, who was the perfect under the radar third defensive end. Like, he really was, because he can do a little bit of everything. He was quiet. And so with Cam out for the year, it's Myles Murphy time. It is. And I think he's got the talent to be a quality run defender. I think he can move inside some, if that's what you want to do on passing downs. I think he's someone that should, from a pass rusher standpoint, have a couple more tools in his bag this year. And he has to deal with Amarius Mims and Trent Brown all camp. Those big bodies leaning on him, and Mims, the dancing bear back there, is heck. Pollock said Brown was a dancing bear, so Mims must be more than a dancing bear, because his athleticism is just insane. So the point is I think Murphy has gotten a lot better just over the past few weeks, and so I'm really excited to see him. They need him to take a big step forward. I think he's ready for it.
Trent Brown, the starting right tackle against the Patriots at this point, with Mims coming off injury, no doubt.
Yeah, and
assuming his back holds up and every other ailment that a veteran like he is, a 10-year veteran, holds up, he's a starting right tackle.
I think he does I feel a little something. This is a joint practice against the Bears. Ain't no way in hell I'm going to risk anything. And he's
frankly,
the
Bengals will never admit this. They'd rather him do that and have him ready to go for the games. He is someone that, for better or worse, yes, practice means something, but this is where I think Zach reads the room with his players incredibly well. He's not going to throw anybody under the bus. It'd be great if you were out there, but if you really don't want to practice and you feel like you're good to go, you better be good to go when you play. And I think Zach Taylor really trusts his players to tell him the truth there.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And I think you're absolutely right about Trent Brown. That they want him to be ready week to week, and that's it. He has a lengthy injury history. He's the only 10-year veteran on the team. All right, let's get you to week 1, week 2. Let's try to keep you as healthy as we can. And by the way, it's the La'el Collins treatment plan, but he's got something left that La'el didn't at their stages of the career. La'el was okay at times, but lost that power explosion combo,
that drive or whatever it is. I think that's a good point, James.
Mm-hmm.
I think, as funny as it sounds to a lot of people who have gotten on Trent Brown in the past, and certainly they exist in New England, I know that much. I think he still has a drive to at least want to win, and he knows Cincinnati with Burrow, if Burrow's healthy and all the weapons are available, Bengals have as good a chance as any in the AFC to compete to go to the Super Bowl.
For sure, especially if they have an offensive line like this one. I was talking with Charlie Goldsmith about this. Like, this offensive line's talented, and it's got to come together. But the offensive line isn't really high on my concern list. Now, if they have 18 injuries, of course it is.
Well,
but
that's the case. any of the 32. That's
right.
I mean, it was the case for the Kansas City Chiefs the last couple of years, and they've won back-to-back Super Bowls.
Don't remind me. Or remind me. Doesn't matter to me. I'm excited to go to Kansas City week 2 in September. It should be fun.
Well, we won't have to wear winter clothing. I know that much. I mean, I know weather patterns can change and whatnot. We won't be wearing heat warmers in our feet. I know that much, James.
No, we won't. Thank goodness. Man. I
mean, when winter game, I'm done with January in Kansas City for now.
I have some pictures of you standing in the tunnel, frozen. It literally looks like you're in Frozen 5.
I don't deal well with the cold. You know that by now. Final thoughts here. Evan McPherson extending him. Everybody's talked about Jamar Chase and whether or not that contract can get done. No brainer extending Evan McPherson, right?
No brainer at all. You get Money Mac done. The Money Mac nickname rings true. And no, Evan is, I think he's got a chance to be one of the best kickers in the NFL, if not the best kicker in the NFL at some point. I'm really bullish on him. Have been really since they drafted him. Yep. And I just like his makeup, like how he carries himself, like his work ethic, like what he's about. And again, those are guys you bet on. And so far, he's gotten better every year. And I think he's in line for a huge, huge season.
Well, and the reason I bring him up and I asked him about the Super Bowl, I think Evan McPherson deep down wants not to be necessarily regarded as Justin Tucker's most accurate kicker in NFL history, but the most clutch playoff kicker in playoff history. And you got to win Super Bowls to do that, really. I mean, let's be fair. But I thought it was interesting on Monday he brought up the names Adam Vinatieri and Harrison Butker.
Yeah. Yeah, those are two clutch names. Obviously, Adam Vinatieri, you have firsthand experience with, and you know how clutch he was. And I think Evan's got some of that gene as well. And it's up to the Bengals to get him in that position. They were close to getting him in that position a few years ago. So we'll see if they can do it again.
All right. He is James Rapien, does an amazing job covering the Cincinnati Bengals for BengalsTalk.com, Locked On Bengals. And his show, go ahead.
You see it? It's called Enter the Jungle. It's right
Enter
there
the Jungle.
Screen.
There it is. Enter the Jungle. You can catch that on Bally Sports, as a matter of fact, with Andrew Fox Miller. I'm sorry. I promised myself I'd have it written down so I wouldn't forget it. It actually is written down, Enter the Jungle with Andrew Fox Miller, and I couldn't read my own writing. I am going to get it relentlessly from you later today. I know that when I see you, I deserve to get it. So awesome. I will be prepared, James. James, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. He's James Rapien. I'm Mike Petraglia. There you go. This Jungle Roar podcast has been brought to you by our great partners at the Game Time app and Prize Picks. And thanks to everybody at CLNS who helps make this podcast possible. Until next week, you know the line, James. Keep that jungle roaring.